semester winding down. So let me tell you how it's going to end. We will have our last in-person class next Friday, following Friday. We will take our final exam, which will be just like our midterm, that following Monday online. So get your final papers in by next Friday. And I may have another or two discussion boards I'll try to put up, credit form, and that will be it.
What do you mean by final exam on Monday?
The following, so next Friday will be our last in-person class,
Okay.
and we'll take our final online from
Oh, like an actual quiz format? this
yeah,
time?
yeah, it's
Okay.
kind of the same way that I gave it, and we'll just do that for Monday. Yeah,
Okay.
next week.
So next Friday is when the written is.
Mm-hmm.
So Professor, by next Friday, you mean, just to clarify,
Is that the 26th?
the 26th is the last class?
26th is the last in-person class, and we'll take the final that Monday. What's that, the 29th?
The 29th final exam quiz?
Yeah, and what I'll do is just, it'll be open, just try to get it, I'll leave it open, try to get it in, hopefully, I'll leave it open until like Tuesday or something like that, and if we need additional time, let me know. But it'll open up on Monday, April 20th. And I'll put some announcement to reiterate.
And you mentioned the final paper, when is that due?
Next Friday.
The,
The 20,
So that's not for the written final ups on Blackboard.
no. Yeah, I'll put an announcement on Blackboard so you know what time on Monday that'll open up, but like I said, I'll give you, you'll have ample time to do it. Have we enjoyed the class so far?
yeah.
Yeah? Our professors don't like to teach this class. This is like an avoidant class, right? Probably because of personalities, maybe they think that only certain personalities can teach it, and how they're comfortable about a lot of subject matter, obviously including things like today and other things we cover, so. Not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. All right, we'll be wrapping up sexual coercion, and then next week, and including Friday, I think Friday we'll start this Friday, sex for sale. We'll look at some of the dynamics and effects of that. But wrapping up sexual coercion, so we kind of looked at rape, sexual assault, rape within the military, historical perspectives, dominance, things of that nature. So we're here with sexual abuse of children, right? The impact. We'll look at some of the statistics relative to the perpetrators of such acts. What's that demographics look like? We'll also look at ways to sort of help prevent these things and to identify the ways to help prevent these sort of acts being acted upon on children. But we kind of want to understand the different dynamics, the different layers of sexual abuse of children. All right, so we say, hey, sexual abuse of children is sexual contact with a child is always coercive. Remember, we say our definition here of a child is prepubescent, 13 years of age or less. We would say any sort of post-pubescent up to legal age would be statutory. So that we kind of classify a little bit different. right? That'd be statutory rape, in essence. We're saying here we're identifying a child is 13 years of age or less, or kind of in the agreed upon age of normal prepubescent life. Child sexual abuse, any adult sexual contact with a child, right? Any adult of legal age or more that has any sexual contact with a child 13 years of age or less. Right, we say pedophilia and or molestation. Right? We say sexual contact with a non-relative. Right? We're talking about relatives. We're talking about incest. Right? A little bit different. Incest is sexual contact with a relative. Right? The most common seem to be brother-sister sexual relationships. First cousin incest. Father-daughter reported to have more and greater negative impact psychologically. Right? And this kind of goes with looking like the degree of likelihood of certain features of disorders or addictions after the acts have occurred, or if the acts are reoccurring in the life. So we say father and daughter, alcoholism is 4 to 5 times more prevalent, right? In the average individual. We say suicide 3 times more likely if there happens to be a father-daughter sexual relationship. Suicide appears to be 3 times more likely in these situations. Drug addiction is very prevalent. So a little bit of dynamic shifted from father-daughter versus, say, mother-son. Both extremely negative, but some have some degrees of differences in terms of the features. All right, characteristics of people who sexually abuse children. Mostly heterosexual males known to the victims. Right? Usually it's someone that the victim knows. We'll look at maybe some stats that kind of reaffirms that. And mostly heterosexual males. We'll look at some charts of some social classes, ethnicity, education, in terms of the abuse rates. There's a site called childmolestationprevention.org. You can get that information from there. See what they have. I believe they have studies of maybe 4,000 admitted child molesters. Right? I'm taking data from that population and measuring it up against more average population non-molesters. Children who are sexually abused are oftentimes lonely, shy, or have poor interpersonal skills. We say some of the victims express long-term issues in relationships, right? The inability to sort of foster long-term relationships due to issues with trust, right? Insecurities with themselves, self-esteem issues. Sexual risk-taking tends to be very prevalent. Promiscuity. Oftentimes denial and disassociation about what actually occurred. Some of the studies show that on average, in terms of promiscuity, it tends to be partners, up to 50 partners or more for particular abuse. Sexual difficulties, right? Issues with sexual performance. We're looking at re-victimization, poor judgment, and partner selection. That kind of picking out toxic or abusive partners to kind of experience the scenarios that they experienced previously. Trauma bonding is another feature, which also kind of goes in hand with getting with toxic individuals, kind of maybe cast shared experiences and stuff. Yes, sir.
All these characteristics are still been describing the abuser right now, the victim.
No, these are
Oh, these are victims.
these are. Phobias, OCDs, compulsions, that seems to be a little bit more prevalent with this group. Physiological, chronic pain in the pelvic and back area, seems to be a physiological symptom. Migraines, sleeping disorders, too much, not enough, anger management issues. Obesity, 2 times more likely to be obese, right, through eating disorders with those who have been sexually abused as children. PTSD, recurring features of living out the experiences of the child. Self-injury is another feature of this. Early pregnancy, parental problems, right? Taking care of their own children, and low self-esteem. Child sexual abuse is often not reported. Research relies heavily on adult reports, right? A lot of the victims don't like to come forward because of shame or other issues, and as well as the perpetrators are very, very difficult to admit their wrongdoings. Overestimated and underestimated problem. We'll look at some of the stats on particular ethnic groups to see how that plays out in terms of research. And in the case of concern, adults reporting so-called recovered memories. We say sometimes there can be disassociation or denial, but we're taking into account trusting that those who do report at a later time are being honest about their experiences. Take a look at some of the stats. All right, so this study here with childmolestationprevention.org has 4,000 child sexual abusers in the child molestation prevention study. Our first one, admitted molesters versus all American men, right? 77% of admitted child molesters are married or formerly married. For American men, 73% are married or formerly married. 46% of admitted child molesters have some college education. Right, so we can say, hey, more child molesters are married than the average American man. Child molesters are a little bit less educated in terms of average American men. 30% of child molesters have high school education only, whereas 32% of American men do. "69% of admitted child molesters are working, as opposed to 64% of American men. And we see we have an equilibrium here on religious sort of standings, 93% for both. 93% of admitted child molesters are religious, whereas 93% of American men. They say these go to all people in both groups who are at least 25 years of age or older. All right, so which ethnic groups molest children, and what does that look like? All right, 72% of men are Caucasian, whereas admitted child molesters are 79%. Hispanic or Latin American men comprise of 11%. Admitted child molesters are 9% of Hispanic or Latin American men. African American men comprise of 12% of the population, whereas African Americans are 6% of admitted child molesters. Asian American men are 4%, admitted child molesters are 1% Asian American. And Native Americans comprise of 1%, whereas admitted child molesters are 3% Native American. All right, so which children do child molesters target? All right, children in the family. 19% of targeted individuals are biological child. Whereas 30% are either stepchild, adopted, or foster child. Brothers and sisters, 12%. Nieces and nephews, 18%, and grandchild, 5%. In terms of children in the neighborhood, 5% have been identified as child left in my care, whereas 40% are a child of friend or neighbor. 10% are children who are strangers. So we can see usually it happens with someone that is known, very rare cases where it's a complete stranger. All right, let's take our first discussion question. All right, here's our first question. What do you believe is the account for the decline in reported child sexual abuse in the United States and also around the globe? Reports have been less and less throughout time. What would be some of your sort of opinions or estimation on why child abuse is reported less and less as time goes on? Let's talk about that in our groups. Some things.
having so
Cause
long
you know
ago,
before
like
you could do like,
obviously
if
still have
you
time.
Yeah.
whistleblower
But like
all
having,
like
I thought of like having done it all that.
it seemed like, and then, I don't know, maybe 2005 or something like this started to change a little bit, where it's like, you were to claim something or whatever, or to like say, common age, whatever, it's like, you have to start proving it. And I wonder if there's something along those lines of like, society starting to question people more when they do something, so it's like, it's just don't feel as safe coming out. As people in general not feeling like they're believing about their actions.
It's not only the fear of being taken away, it's the fear of being punished. Because clearly sexual abuse means their whole beliefs are stuck. And so if you're not penalized, it's a fear of, I could get in more trouble,
Yeah.
or I could make some situational worse.
Yeah.
Because along with sexual abuse also comes usual, virtual abuse, physical abuse.
I think that's why you want to.
Psychological abuse, right? Because they have all these side effects from the
I wonder how much the internet plays into that, because that's also part of it, where it's like, definitely like high profile ones, you know, it's like, some celebrity or whatever, that's like, maybe public mentality, looking at it. I'm trying to think like, would that whittle all the way down to like, the lay person or whatever, it's like, are they gonna get a bunch of backlash? But I agree that the society, I think psychology that gets changed and people are doing it. Yeah, actually, yeah, I wonder about that, is how much like the internet and information age is like that, cause definitely now it's feels very, society's kind of word of mouth, and it's still like, okay, like, if we bring up something, it's like, oh, that part of the family or this person or whatever, it's like, you can obviously end up in all the time. Kind of shame society.
That goes into the whole of not believing it or saying that, well, you were doing on my way, you know, that's a picture of yourself worse, like we have to control,
I
because
wonder
you're all
also
fault,
if
and
any,
you want to report it.
like, internet really goes into it all of like,
Kids is a big report, frontal lobe.
just like more access, and then it's like, okay, well now the kid can get that, so from the internet, they can see things and whatnot, and that sort of thing. And if it's more along the lines of like, well, that kid doesn't wanna say anything, because it's like, oh, no, my parents would think, oh, I was going somewhere, and I was this person, like the classic thing, that says like, oh, I broke my arm, and I didn't tell my parents because I didn't want them to get in trouble, so it's like, I think internet probably plays into just access and, how much you, the access versus also just, you know, that's, kids, cause it's like, yeah, before, like, my kids suffer, so it's like, maybe I don't know where they are, but they're gone.
Alright, group one, what are some of your thoughts on this?
We discussed, one, we think there's kind of a societal, climate where definitely before there was, people believed you more, so if you opened up, you called someone out, you like, it kind of goes along with shame culture, but like, in general, it's like you could bring something up and like people would believe you right away, it seems like, and then around, 2000s of the internet age, especially now, we see like, you bring something up and it's immediately just a debate of like whether or not it's true. So I think a lot of victims feel that if they were to come forward, they're not, they're scared, people won't be on their side, people would question them, that sort of thing. So I think kind of the internet age and the information age and stuff like that just makes people feel less confident coming forward. And then we were discussing also, I think internet just plays into it a bit of like the access of, again, it's like I kind of wonder if it's like, oh, okay, now kids have access to internet and they can be out of their parents' supervision. Again, it kind of goes along the lines of like, oh, okay, well, you have to like meet this person or whatever, but still in the sense of like kids not wanting to report that because, oh, I'm gonna get in trouble. It's a classic bad, I don't wanna tell my parents because I'm gonna get in trouble with it.
Okay. So you're saying a little bit is the internet, a little bit is shame and guilt, and part of it is being believed that it actually occurred.
Yeah, I think society has shifted away a bit to becoming a kind of a questioning society instead of just like first thing said is believe to prove it otherwise.
We saw similar stuff. We thought a lot, like a huge part of it could be due to the fact that if it happens so later in life, the trauma's obviously still there, but like you're required to bring that all back up again in order to go through the legal process.
You're saying that they may be avoiding the reliving of the trauma and so
Yeah,
on?
and like there's such a huge presence of legalities around that and like CPS now and everything, so that could, I mean, it's meant to be here to like make us safer, but it could be like more intimidating for people.
So maybe they find it's more of a burden to report than not report.
I feel like it can also be one of those things where some people don't like saying things just because of like all of the work I guess they have to do. Like you have to explain everything, and like she said, a lot of people like to bring it up again, but it also can be like also nervous that like others wouldn't believe them, like that whole thing. I mean, that could also happen when you're older too, but
The
I think that's one
provability
thing.
of it.
Or like if people would find out and then like shame and stuff like that.
Okay. Alright, so we say provability and stigmatization, right? And also the burden of the amount of work that was required to prove it and try to bring someone to justice, right, as a perpetrator.
People are reasonably untrusting of the system that deals with these cases. And what we're starting to find out now is that it's actually people in very high places who are the ones that are committing these crimes. Like everybody knows about Jeffrey Epstein's island, and apparently that Stephen Hawking was on it too. And now those are things that everybody knows, and so it's harder for us to come forward about those things when we know that there's all these people in the system who are looking out for each other, because even the people who you think are supposed to protect you are not protecting you. They're protecting their buddies in higher places. So you can't really, so there's no point in reporting it, because it's not going to go anywhere. And it might even just cause more trouble for you, because then they'll be after you.
Interesting point. So we say power and hierarchy, which maybe have shifted to create more fear about coming forward, right? The repercussions of people in high places, right? And being protected by other high people in places. Jerry Sandusky, who remembers that the Ohio State football camp situation? Sandusky was a football coach, and he had a camp, and he would invite like new recruits to come there. And if you were a good player, you get to sleep over at his house. They found out he had been molesting these boys for years and years and years. Finally got put on trial, a long time after, and he's put away forever. Right? Trusted individuals, people in high places. Clark, your group.
We discussed that there may just be a lack of awareness. Parents usually think my kid's fine, my spouse is a great person, they're doing all they can, there's nothing wrong, or they may not want to talk about it because they don't believe help can be done. Or if they do reach out, CPS can say, I don't want to see the kid if they're not broken, dying, or bleeding. Right? They just don't care.
Alright, so we say a lack of awareness, maybe a lack of monitoring on parents' behalf. They have busy lives and not paying attention to tablets and phones.
The child could be afraid of repercussions, right? Because with the production of sexual abuse often usually comes with emotional abuse, psychological abuse,
Yeah.
physical abuse. So if they do reach out for help, there could be repercussions, and they could be molested worse, it could be beaten worse, it could be abused worse, and then rather just be quiet to endure what they have instead of have it worse.
Absolutely, because they have no real expectation of what will happen after the fact, right? That the sense of power that their perpetrators may have on them as a very, very young child, that's frightening to know what could potentially happen. Yes.
I just realized with Clark saying that, like, our whole life, remember, it was stranger danger, but it was never, it was, it was all strangers, but then all the stats you just told us was,
It's
it's
not
family,
strangers.
it's someone you know, it's, like, yeah.
The danger is all around us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we also kind of talked about that of like, maybe say you do know it, and then it's in the family, and then you don't really wanna bring it up, and like, that
And
sort
then-
of thing, and expose your family for having that kind of person.
Absolutely. Because we think that most of these people are trusted individuals. You may feel that the fallout just from knowing somebody or them being a relative of some sort, that could potentially just blow up the entire family and no one will ever be the same. So even if the parents are told, parents might go about hiding that, right? Hiding information out of their own embarrassment, their own stigma, within the community, within the family, within the culture itself. So it can be swept under the rug, oftentimes, which it is. Good. Last group.
So we kind of talked a lot about like, as far as like the trauma goes, like we understand that like, yeah, when you do bring this up in like a lawsuit action, there is a lot associated with that, and so it's, yeah, a large pressure for the victim to talk about that. We also kind of talked about like how culture has made it more so, I don't want to say justifiable, but because it is such a hot topic about like something, like the whole Me Too movement that happened in 2018 and all of that, like has really just kind of progressed it. But then it almost, I don't want to say it becomes normalized because it shouldn't be, but people have started becoming less aware of like certain physical boundaries, and it's like, just because like one instant happened, it's like, I could talk about it, but instead because of the trauma that's associated there, or like from a woman's perspective, like if you're kind of just pushed aside most times, like it's not in culture, then it just kind of left to the back burner rather than actually talking about it.
Okay, so culture plays a huge, huge role in whether people will come forward or even admit if they know that something actually is happening. All right, let's see a little bit more and then we're gonna get out of here. All right, pedophiles online, right? The internet has made it increasingly easier for pedophiles to seek out victims, and also for children to be exposed to more sort of salacious materials and interactions with potential perpetrators. So we say there's increased opportunities to take advantage of children now, right? We think that there may be a lack of restrictions on social media sites, and those platforms alike. Gain a child's trust and then try to arrange a meeting. Right? That's been made a lot easier now, whereas before things had to be more personal than impersonal. Some provision, responsibility for protecting children resides with the parents. Do you believe that to be completely true? That it's up to the parents to protect this from happening?
I think with a lot of the discussion questions we have had, throughout a lot of it, it was at the lower levels. I think, yeah, all of us say like us agree that on the far end, there does need to be the extremes. There needs to be whatever the FBI investigating child trafficking and all those things, because on the far end there is the super evils and the crazy dark stuff. It's like, it's not up to us to really do that. So, yeah, make sure your kid isn't talking to some stranger on the internet and whatnot. But I think it's ultimately like, we agree that the far end of convicting a lot of these things would lead up to
They say maybe it's multifaceted, right? It should heavily rely on the parents, but also maybe the platforms have a little responsibility on restricting certain interactions, using sort of mechanisms to identify children who should not be on these platforms, right? But we say parents should monitor activities, be clear to never meet an internet acquaintance without a responsible adult. Present, we see that adults get catfished. And so it's easy for us to get wrapped up in someone who creates a fake profile for any means. Imagine an impressionable child, how easy that would be, right? With all sorts of presents and gifts that could be exchanged for some interaction. Effects of child abuse. We are described quite a bit, but we say severely traumatizing and emotionally damaging experience with long-term negative consequences. Usually it's lifelong. The longer the molestation goes on, the worse the prognosis. Strong correlating factors, physical force and victim-offender relationship, the type of sexual abuse, right? How devastating it was, and the physical act, right? Is a major factor of, as well as the victim-offender relationship. We saw that daughters and fathers tend to be the worst sort of these creatures. All right, preventing child sexual abuse. Present prevention-oriented material at a young age. Avoid making the discussion unduly frightening, right? Trying to create sort of a comfort zone for children to express, unwarranted touching or inappropriate behavior with an adult or someone who's not an adult as well. Explain okay and not okay touches. Encourage children to believe they have rights. Right? Show them that they do have individual power and that others shouldn't have power over them. In many ways, encourage communication, be immediate when faced with uncomfortable situations, right? Be able to communicate it as it's taking place or right after. And discuss strategies adults might use to get children to participate in sexual activities. Inform them of some of the styles that these predators use to try to solicit sexual activity. All right, when the child tells, children who have been sexually abused often either delay disclosure or do not tell at all. We already mentioned the reasons why. It is important that parents respond appropriately to instances of child abuse involving their child, and such acts should not be ignored. All right, so we said in summary, a person has been sexually victimized when they are deprived of free choice and is coerced or forced to comply with sexual acts under duress. Forms of sexual coercion include rape, sexual harassment, and sexual abuse of children. All right, so that'll wrap it up with sexual coercion. We can get out of here a little bit early. We'll pick up our next topic of sex for sale on Friday, and we'll go forward from there.
Professor, the paper, the reflection ones, and will that be?
Of course, reflection.